The Orlando Magic are going to be one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference this upcoming season. Don't get it twisted. That's just the way it's going to be. But that being said, that doesn't mean that everything is doom and gloom about the Orlando Magic, and that doesn't mean that there isn't some reasons to be optimistic about this group and to watch this group for the upcoming season. Their young guards are promising. You can poke holes in a good chunk of it, but it is promising. Markelle Fultz has shown the ability to be a quality starting point guard in the NBA. Not necessarily some all-star caliber guard, but a quality starting guard nonetheless, if he can stay healthy. That, of course, being the biggest hole in his current long-term projections. Cole Anthony as a rookie showed some upside. I think his efficiency as a scoring does concern me. As of right now, he seems like another Colin Sexton, but maybe not even as good of a scorer, which, as we know right now, people have hesitancy to pay and doesn't have a lot of significant value at that type of money for a lot of teams in the NBA. But ultimately, again, Cole Anthony just is not even as good of a scorer. You could argue he's a better playmaker, but I don't think at this point in time he's a good enough playmaker to be considered an amazing prospect as a starting point guard in the future down the line in the NBA. But a potentially intriguing guy if he can continue to improve his playmaking or can become more efficient throughout the first couple of years in the NBA, because of course he is still very young and has a lot of room to grow. Jalen Suggs, who they just took with the 5th overall pick, has a lot of upside, probably the one who has the least holes to poke out of their young guards. He has a lot of upside as a playmaker, looks to be someone who can be a solid defensive guard, and at 6'4", if he does end up being at the point guard spot long term, has a lot of height and size and length to be able to defend that position extremely well. Ultimately on this team, he probably ends up being a 2 guard, at least for this season, but if he's at the 1 long term, then he has a lot more upside on the defensive end and even still can be a solid defender as a shooting guard. He has some potential to be a good 3-point shooter, a good mid-range scorer, a guy who can attack the rim, play make for others. He has a lot of upside, and probably the highest upside, and I would argue the only one with star potential on this team currently. RJ Hampton, of course, is the 4th of those young guards who has upside as well, has apparently grown a couple of inches this summer, now up to 6'6", so it's potential we see some minutes of him at the 3, but nonetheless, him at 6'6" has a lot of upside on both ends of the floor as well. Their forwards consist of some pretty nice depth as well. Of course, Jonathan Isaac will hopefully be back from injury at some point throughout the season and has the potential to be a Defensive Player of the Year candidate while being able to shoot the 3 at a decent rate as well. Franz Wagner has also now joined the team, being drafted this summer, and has some upside as a wing player as well as Juma Okeke, who also showed some upside at the back end of last year, as he is still very young in his NBA career as well. And so you notice the fact that Orlando have a lot of depth in youth at every position. That is the upside about this Orlando Magic team, is that other than Jalen Suggs, they don't necessarily have one star player. But you could argue that they are the deepest team in the league. I wouldn't make that argument personally, because I do think there are a couple of rosters a bit deeper than them. But they are extremely deep. We haven't talked about the fact that they still have Michael Carter-Williams, Gary Harris, Etuan Moore. They also have the likes of Terrence Ross. And then when you look at the center position, they have, of course, their young players of Wendell Carter and Mo Bamba, who I will talk about in a minute. And then they also have Mo Wagner and Robin Lopez. This team is absurdly deep, which is extremely uncharacteristic and odd for a team in a rebuild, not to mention a team that is just starting their rebuild, having just traded away Nikola Vucevic and Aaron Gordon at the trade deadline last season. And so this Orlando Magic team has that in their upside. They have a lot of young pieces that if 1 or 2 of them just hit and become a high-level player, then they are going to have a good team long-term. They also just have the assets, draft picks, and young players alike, that if a trade becomes available, that they can try to acquire someone. As much as Orlando historically isn't known for being a big market team, they could try and acquire someone via trade to bring in a higher quality piece to this group. They have that options, they have that upside, and that level of depth and the value and the number of pieces that they have on this team is what makes that so possible. Wendell Carter Jr., as mentioned, was acquired from the Nikola Vucevic trade at the deadline last year, and I think has a lot of upside as their long-term starting center. He is in a contract year, so his production and performances this year with Orlando is going to be very indicative of how much he gets paid at the end of the year, and so I have no doubt that he is going to have a very good season. And Mo Bamba, since the Nikola Vucevic trade, has actually looked like an NBA player. He still can be a little bit small in certain scenarios and isn't great against some bigger centers, but he is a very good rim protector. He can space the floor and looks like he could have a role in the NBA, which was looking a little bit unlikely before the Nikola Vucevic trade. Ultimately, they still do have some trade pieces as well that they can get some more value back for this team and their vets in Gary Harris and Terrence Ross. But ultimately, this team is all about the youth right now. And so my expectations for Orlando next year: play their young guys a crap ton, trade away Gary Harris and Terrence Ross, and just let their young guys develop. This is not going to be a good team. If I'm being completely honest, I think this is probably the worst team in the Eastern Conference for this upcoming season. But ultimately, they have a lot of young pieces. They are just starting their rebuild. They just traded away Nikola Vucevic and Aaron Gordon. There is no hurry for them to be competitive. But ultimately, this is the first time in a while that I can look at this Orlando Magic group and say, sure, they might be bad right now, but they actually have more upside than just being the 8th or the 9th or the 10th seed in the Eastern Conference, which is all their upside has been for a while now. When you looked at the Nikola Vucevic-led Orlando Magic teams, at best they were getting into the 7th seed or the 8th seed, and that was it. They were not doing any better than that. But if they make their moves right, if they play their cards right, and they can develop their young players correctly, there is upside here to actually be more than just mediocre. So that is my thoughts on the Orlando Magic. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below about this group heading into this upcoming season. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And if you want to hear my other season previews headed into the 2021-22 NBA season, then be sure to click the box on the right-hand side of the screen. That being said, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.